everyone, and okay, awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Private Practice Show. If you are watching this, can you please let me know that you can hear me and see me, right? Let me know in the comments really quickly. Can you hear me and see me okay? That would be super, super helpful. So tonight we're going to be joined by an amazing SLP who has a very, very cool private practice. So Kate Glennon's going to come on here in just a second. She is affectionately known as the Outdoorsy SLP, and she's doing really, really cool things with her private practice. She is an outside of the box thinker, an outside of the box private practitioner with literally an outside of the box or outside of the building private practice. So let me go ahead and bring Kate on. Impressed with what she's doing. Like, I am so impressed with what she's doing. So let's see. Kate should be coming on in 1 second. Perfect. How's it going?
Hello. Are we live?
We're live, and we have so many people who are watching / listening to this who I think their interest is kind of peaked with like outside of the box therapy, outside of the building therapy. Like, what are they going to talk about? So, Kate, what I would love is if you could just start off, just kind of like introduce yourself and let people know your name, your location, and the name of your private practice.
Okay, I am Kate Glennon. I'm a certified SLP and certified nature-based educator, and I am located in the seacoast of New Hampshire. So I am a mobile private practice, and the name of my practice is the Outdoorsy SLP.
So I just think that you're one of the coolest people ever. Like, I love people who are outside of the box thinkers, who are doing stuff their own way, right? Paving their own path, all that kind of good stuff. And so what I would love to do to start this kind of interview off is, could you kind of start from the beginning of your journey as a speech pathologist and kind of walk us through what that was kind of like for you, and then at what point did you start thinking about private practice?
Wow, the journey's been wild. It's been wild. I worked as a speech and language assistant before I went to grad school because I didn't know that this is what I wanted to do. And after working in the schools, I knew that that was not where I wanted to be. So I went back to graduate school and I immediately began working for someone else's private practice. And I remained there for 12 years. That experience shaped who I am as a clinician and built all of my knowledge base and connected me to all the wonderful SLPs that I know now. And that's kind of where I grew up. But the whole time there, I just was trying to grow outside, literally, of the walls of the practice. And COVID hit, and I had a kid that could not sit. They just couldn't sit and do remote. And I was like, can I go to their backyard? And I had to take out my own insurance policy and be able to go see this kiddo out in their backyard. And it was amazing. It was like the best therapy I'd ever done. And then, I slowly got back into the clinic and I was just like, the walls. And I just couldn't take the walls. And there were all sorts of different life factors that played a role. I'm also a mom and a military wife. So our life is chaotic. And I just needed a change. So my daughter was enrolled in nature school and the school approached me about teaching. And I actually left speech language pathology for 3 years. I supported social learning in the classroom and executive function skills, and I taught reading and math. And but I was outdoors 6 to 8 hours a day, and then the school abruptly closed. So it was really hard. Our whole family had to transition out of nature school, and I had 6 weeks to decide what I was going to do. And I knew I always had an open door to where I had left, but I bought Jenna's forms while I still worked for the other clinician years. Like I probably had them for when they first came out. I want to say, what, 5 years, maybe 6. And I was like, oh, right? Yeah. I was like, okay, like this is what you were meant to do. Like you were meant to work for yourself and be creative and do things in a different way in your own vision. Right. So the Outdoorsy SLP was born. I was like, I can't go back to 4 walls in a clinic. Like I need to do this outside. So um, I found parks and I found places that I loved that were close to the clientele that I was bringing in, and they meet me at parks and we do our therapy outdoors. I do some home based, but we do it the same way. We're outside. And sometimes we're inside. But my preference is to be outdoors. And when we are inside, I do try to bring in nature themed practice, and that's just sort of what drives what I do. And I can really follow the kids' leads. And I just, for people that love the outdoors and nature and what that does for your body, it just brings such a level of connection. Like today at the park there were nesting snapping turtles, and like a client and I had to go talk to the conservationist and be like, can we they decided to nest in the bark mulch of the playground, which was not a great spot. Yeah. So I know. So there were so many language tasks involved with being able to like save the turtle. And then we're sitting on a bench practicing our vocalic R's, and a giant bald eagle swoops down into the river and catches a fish. Like, so I got the text from my mom tonight being like, my daughter said that today was the most magical day of her life, and she wishes she could see Mrs. Kate every day. And I was like, that is why I built a private practice, right? Because and she was just thanking me for being able to make it both educational, therapeutic, and so special for the kids. So that is special for me, and that is why I do what I do, I guess. And it's ever evolving. I am learning as I go. I'm creeping up on 1 year, so.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, what a magical day, right? Like, I think we can all think of days in our life as clinicians where just something magical happened, whatever that thing was, that just reminds us, like, this is why I got into this profession. And then sometimes it's like, not only is this why I got into this profession, but this is why I got into private practice, right? Like, I'm sure probably everyone listening to watching this can't quite imagine a world where you would see a bald eagle on a bench at a playground in like a normal like therapy like setting. Like that just doesn't happen, right? This is something that you wanted to do and that you created for yourself. And so I love that. Now I have like a whole bunch of questions that are like that are curious
Yeah,
questions, right? So
fire away.
so okay, great. So you're working at this private practice where you said you grew up there, you had a great experience, you learned all these things, right? Would you consider that like a more air quotes traditional private practice?
Oh yes, absolutely, hands down. Mostly took insurance. It was you were more of a generalist, so whatever came your way is what you treated. So if a client comes to me and it's not a, a disorder or a difference that, or a communication need or a reading intervention that I am comfortable with, I refer out. So I don't treat across the span of what an SLP can do anymore. I think that was kind of what led to my burnout. Is it was like, yeah, I can do this, I can figure it out, and I can do the research, and I can. But when that was the constant of what was coming through the door, I feel like I serve my clients better now with a little more niche expertise. So
Yeah. Okay, I love that. Because I think that that's one of the things that when people have these more, outside of the box practices, right? It often stems from being like so inside of the box that they like have to break out,
yeah,
right? And it could be like for the reasons like you said, like, just having to be a generalist, but there was a certain area that you wanted to do, right? Or, maybe it was like, I personally have, and I'm not saying this is the case for you, but as a person with ADHD, it was very hard for me to work for like a micromanagey boss kind of a person, right? And like to have like hard deadlines and like attention to detail and all these things, like that was not an environment where I thrived in. So I created an environment for myself through my own practice where I was able to thrive, right? And so like I would imagine, without putting words in your mouth, that like some of the experiences that you had in the private practice, while fantastic, might have also led you to want to create something different. Is that correct?
absolutely. So you and I have discussed this in the past. Yes, I do have ADHD. I don't fit the mold of the type A SLP, and I think sometimes I drove still my friends today, but my type A SLP friends bananas in the clinic, right? Because I was just like, it's hard for me to focus, and that's why I work really well with this population, and it's why we work so well together outdoors. So yes, I think that did help me make the choices that I have made to date, about how I want things to work and feel. And as I move to a position where I want to consider hiring on, clinicians to join my team, it's really important to me that they feel that same feeling as part of the practice, and operate in a similar manner. It's not to say someone that has a different personality type can't do this work, but it requires a degree of flexibility and thinking on your feet that not all clinicians are comfortable with.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because this is like the I don't know if paradox is the right word, but like different settings attract different people, right?
Right.
We know that there are people who are identifying more as a type A personality who love the structure that you can have sometimes in schools and hospitals and private practices, right? And so some people love that. And then other people, like you and I, actually don't thrive in that kind of environment and need something where we do have, different types of deadlines or different types of documentation. Or, I mean, you still have to follow the same rules of ethics and law and all that kind of stuff, right? But you can do things on your own time and in your own way, in a way that works for you and your neurotype. And I think that that's also really important.
Yeah, I do. I think it's really important. And I do contract with a private school as well. But they have a similar philosophy in their learning and their educational model. And they have this beautiful outdoor classroom, and they partner with outdoor specialists. And they've brought in an OT that I actually brought into the school that I taught at. So we have this really great collaborative environment. I still get to be a part of that collaboration while still owning my private practice. So it's really fun. And I've been able to kind of, from teaching and taking in my learning with the science of reading, I've done, a course over the past 2 years that I've been able to make this little niche, at the private school where I'm tying in the literacy piece as well too, which is not something I had done in the past. Before it was like I'm an SLP that doesn't get to talk about that. So that's been a big area of expansion for me in my learning too. So yeah, this private practice has provided me the opportunity to kind of learn and grow in my way, and it's been awesome. So
I love that. Okay. Can I ask you like more like just curious, Jenna being curious questions?
yeah.
And people who are watching, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in here. But kind of like what came first? Your desire to have a private practice or to do something like outdoorsy? Like how did these two things merge together? Because like for the general, let me take a step back. For the general population like me, I would definitely identify, especially pre-COVID, as an indoorsy person. Right. And so
Yep.
like I had nothing on my radar about outdoor based speech language services, occupational therapy, nature school. I had never ever heard of that until literally the last like 1 or 2 years, right? And so how did you kind of figure out that you could have a nature based private practice?
Um, Well, my kids attended a nature-based daycare and preschool through their years. So my daughter entered the nature-based school that I was teaching at in kindergarten, and it was like I learned as I went. I was not a classically trained teacher. I was a speech language pathologist. So I was learning as I was going, and I was like, I can do therapy outside, so I would occasionally see a couple kids on the side too. And it was just I wouldn't say one came before the other. I always wanted to have my own private practice, but the timing never there was never a right time. It's kind of like having kids, right? There's never a right time. If you're gonna do it, you're doing it, right? So this is my fourth baby here, and I just I just knew I couldn't go back indoors after working outside and having that freedom and flexibility, and what it did for my regulation and the kids' regulation and the connection that you're able to make with your clients while you're outside just feels so different than when you're in the clinic. There's never a moment where it's like, sometimes you're in the room and you've brought in these materials and you're like, this is not working. Like, this is not working. But I've got these four walls, and, I could run to the toy room and grab something else, right? I don't ever have to do that. I just turn a corner. Like I turn a trail. I bring attention to something else outdoors. Um, we sit down or we take off our shoes or we just kind of get grounded where we are outdoors. And the more that I did that while I was teaching in the classroom, the more it just reinforced when I had to make a decision about what my next career move was, that this was the path that I had to take.
I
And I
love that.
didn't know how I was going to do it. I had literally no idea how it was going to work, but I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. So that's what landed me here.
I love that. And
Yeah.
so what was that like from the time that you're like, okay, I think I'm going to do this. Like, what was it like, because a lot of people who are watching slash listening, like have this idea that they would like to have a private practice, but like, don't kind of know like what that could look like for them. Right. So what did it look like for you from like idea to like getting your first client?
Um, it was, I think chaos is probably the word I'm going to use to describe it, right? Because I was also wrapping up a school year for these 21 kids whose school was ending, right? So, but simultaneously, I just started checking off the boxes. I'm thankful for you because it was like you provide so much to clinicians without them even being in your program, right? Like from the information that you shared, I was able to like cross all my T's and dot my I's to legally be able to be like, okay, I'm going to do this now. And again, I'm private pay, don't take insurance. So it just continued to evolve. I had families that I had worked with previously that had come back to me because they heard that I'd opened a private practice. I had students that had more speech and language needs that I could then address outside of the classroom. So they stayed on caseload, and things just kind of evolved from there. A lot of it was word of mouth once, people knew that I had opened a private practice. My clients just kind of appeared. A lot came from the private school, but I've been working and living in this community my entire life. So I grew up 20 minutes down the street from where my home base is now. So um, I just had a lot of community, and that's really what has helped my practice continue to thrive and work it out there. I haven't truly marketed a lot of my business outside of the work that I've put into Instagram and just talking with people, and that's our specialty as SLPs. So I think fear can stop us from making any change, but it also, that's the place that you're going to grow the most is when you're so scared to do it. You know, Having that opportunity. I had 3 kids at home. I had an 8-month-old at home. I had a deployed husband, an 8-month-old, and a 9 and 7. Well, they were 6 and 8 at the time. And I was single parenting, but I was like, I got to do this. So I did it.
Yeah. You did it, and like,
Yeah.
and look what it's become, right? Like that's the cool thing too, right? And so given all of these, like what people could think of as limitations, right? Deployed husband, 3 children, one of them was still very, very little, right? Like ADHD, pandemic, all of these things that like could have really stopped you. And you're like, you know what? I really want to do this, and I want to do this for myself. I want to do this for my clients. I want to do this for my community, right? And you just like made it happen. And like you said, you're learning along the way. And that's true for all private practitioners, right? Just like we amass clinical knowledge over not just years but decades, the same thing is true for your private practice, right? Like and you're coming up on a year, right?
Yeah.
I can only imagine like what you know now versus what you knew a year ago, and then what you'll know over the next year, especially if you start to hire, is going to be exponentially different.
Right. It's huge. And, I did join Jenna's Grow program, and my time in there is like, I can't believe where the time has gone in the past 6 months. But, having that community, and even in the moments where you're not fully active in that, it provides so much information. Even if you're just reading along, like you're learning so much as you go, and there's such a nice sense of community. If others are doing it right alongside you, so it doesn't feel so isolating, which has been such an asset. So
Yeah. I love that. So one of the things that you said that I think is really cool that I like to just talk about a little bit further is that a lot of your clients are coming from word of mouth, right? People who know about you through like the private school, through the area, through, your connection living in this community for your whole life, right?
Yep.
But one of the things I think is really interesting about private practices now is that you do have to differentiate yourself from other clinics, right? And from other private practitioners. And I don't know if you live in an area where there are, other, private practices or not, but if you have, kind of you're choosing between, two different things and there's one that offers, I don't mean to say like generic, but more just kind of traditional services, or someone that offers something that is different, that you're like, well, that's interesting, right? Like I think it's cool, and I think it's important for private practitioners to set themselves apart from other practices, because there is getting to be a little bit more competition in the private practice world, and everyone knows that I'm not like into competition per se, but the reality is that people are choosing between practices and experiences. And so I really like, Kate, how you also have like differentiated yourself from other practices by being very different.
Yeah. Um, my area is saturated in private practices. I live in Dover, New Hampshire, and that's like my home base. And I think there are 7 private clinics in our city. Not that, and that's not counting, including the practice I used to work for, and when I went to open a private practice, I had the professional courtesy to call and say, I want you to know that I've respected what you have built. It is amazing. I'm opening a private practice in town, but this is what it'll look like. And I think that that's really important. So another big piece of what has started to evolve out of this work in private practice is there are solo practitioners in my area that also own private practices, and I've created this collaborative. So we meet at a local cafe on Fridays, and we like co-work for 2 to 3 hours. Sometimes some of us bring our babies along, sometimes we don't. And we all have our own little kind of niche, but we all do some very similar things. And it's just been such a wonderful space. Because we're all local, so we're all kind of tapping into the same environment. But someone like heavily specializes in literacy and OG is OG trained. One of my other friends, actually, who I worked at the other practice with, left that practice to open her business, and she focuses on Gestalt language processing, and that's like her niche. And then my other friend is a little bit more speech sound disorders and a generalist and does a lot of telehealth. So we all have these like different areas. And there's often times where clients will call all 3 of us, and then we're like, "Hey, did you get word?" And one of we all kind of make a decision of like, "No, this is the best place for this client to be." So I was a lot of my practice I do now is undoing things that I had known when working for someone else, right? So um collaboration is like one of our greatest assets in private practice. So yes, they are our competitors, but I have gained so much more out of collaborating with other private practitioners than I would if I did not speak with them. Even referrals, like referrals come from them. I have referrals come in and I send it to them. I'm like, I'm not your gal. I'm not gonna, I know you might love what I'm doing, but what I'm doing isn't a fit for your child. And like, here's the clinician that is the fit for your child. And I don't know, maybe it's just karma when that kind of comes back full circle. It just like has really worked out for us, and it's been awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how that will continue to grow.
Yeah. I mean, that too is like such a giant shift. Like anyone who's followed me for any length of time knows that I talk about like the old way and the new way to be in private practice, right? And the old way is like all of the things that are not what you're doing, right? Like you are the definition of the new way, right? So like
Right.
the old way is having a physical location, right? Is
Right.
being more of a generalist and seeing everybody like who comes in, or being like a 30-year down the road specialist that like everyone, anyway, you know what I mean. um and then the other things like are like about being competitive, right? And saying like, no, like I need to get all these clients for myself and I'm going to have a giant wait list and whatever else. And like you're clearly in the new way category, right? You've got this mobile practice that you're, doing outdoors. That's different, right? And I just think all of the things you're doing are so cool and are really showing people that you can make private practice be exactly what you want. But honestly, Kate, this sounds like what you need, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both of those things. It's what I want and what I need, and I think you still have to be careful to build your boundaries within your private practice. It's very easy to like say all the yeses and then be like,
Oh,
whoa, okay, like, and coming back to my why of like why I opened the private practice. One, so I can have more balance with my family and my kids. But the other piece is so I have the freedom to practice in the way that best suits me, so it best suits my clients. And I just never really thought about myself as much in the picture of supporting my clients. So the more that I support myself, the better I am to serve my clients, and that's a piece that it is the old way, right? We didn't get to think about ourselves as clinicians. We just did the job, right? And now so much of me is ingrained in what I do that, I bring that to my families and to my clients, and you know my clients become like part of the little outdoorsy family, and that's really those deeper relationships with my families, my clients, is really, I think, what has drived my practice, which is different than the boundaries I used to hold working for someone else. So
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I love that you mentioned, your family. So my other question is, a lot of people who are in private practice or actually are thinking about private practice do have families, right? They've got kids, they've got spouses, they got whatever else. And they want to be able to have a way to make income, right? To earn money and using their, clinical knowledge and skills and degree and everything else. But they also want to be able to have that flexible schedule. So, what would you say that how has private practice worked for your family?
um it- you know we're working through all the seasons right now, I would say. But because I have those relationships with my families and clients, when things come up and I just can't be there, there isn't someone else to be there. So it's been great. Families are like, we get it. Like, you're a human. I'm like, oh my God, I was so worried that you were going to be like, you canceled that. It just happened last night. My childcare situation for the evening fell out. My husband was at work till 10 o'clock, and it was like, I'm sorry, I got to cancel group tonight. I just couldn't do it. And they were like, oh, no big deal. We'll see you next week. And it's like, okay. Those are, I think those are the things that really help, like, remind me that I'm in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, totally. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. So, you mentioned hiring, right? And that's something that you might be thinking about doing in the next couple months. Tell us more about that decision, right? How have you as a solo private practitioner started to think about hiring?
Um, I started to feel a little burnt out. So I was starting to take on too many numbers. And when my school contract ended, most of those kids needed to shift to the afternoons. So I had to make a big shift. But in my head, I'm like, I can't work till 7 p.m. every night all
Yeah.
summer long. It's beautiful outside, but like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Um, so looking at like how the numbers start to build, and like what can this look like, and how can I step back and take more of like my CEO role,
Hmm.
right, and the business owner role, and have more direct time with someone I can partner with that wants to do things in the way that Outdoorsy is doing them. And that's where the need and desire to hire has kind of grown. I thoroughly enjoy the creative space time. Like, I don't have enough time for that right now. So, I'm in the works of building out a course to say to other SLPs, here's how you get outdoors. Because it's not as simple as just take the kid outside. I wish it was just as simple as just take the kid outside. But there's such a laundry list of pieces that have to come together. And I've had so many SLPs on Instagram being like, I don't know how you're doing this. Like, I want to do that. It's like, well, I got to teach you guys how to do this, because I'm not saying it's incredibly difficult, but there's a methodology about what got me to this point to be able to take kids safely outdoors, right? I think that's a huge piece too. Um, the safety piece is huge for me. So um, I would like to be able to spend more time in my creative space and um, still be able to provide this service. But I can't do it all. So that's where it's like it's time to grow and to hopefully hire someone on so that Outdoorsy can continue to provide services in this way, but I don't have to be the only one to do it, but I can bring on the right people. I have some dream SLPs in mind that I've been, knocking on their doors for a while now. So it's gonna have to just be a feel for me. That's kind of how I run my business, and I know it's not always great. I do look at the numbers, but it has to feel right, and the timing has to feel right, and I really have to listen to that intuition when it comes time to bring someone on the team. So, my first move that I did was hiring a virtual assistant, and that's not always what people think because it costs me money, but it gives me time. The time that I have for her to do the tasks that this brain just can't do. And we were on the call the other day, and I was like, I am so glad you did that. Like, I don't think you know how long that would have taken me. She's like, no, no, no. I was doing it and I was giggling, thinking, this is taking me forever. Can you even imagine how long it would have taken Kate? Like, that's just it. And she just happens to be a perfect fit. She's not an SLP. She's a friend I met through another business venture. Um, so that's huge too. I will say, I didn't really touch on this, but like owning a business, this isn't the only business that I own. So I feel like I've had a lot of business expertise and knowledge kind of going into this, but not related to speech pathology and not like direct people contact, but that definitely helped shape. You don't have to just know SLP business. You begin to learn general business knowledge and how that helps you build your practice. So,
Yes,
oh,
totally. And
we
I
don't get
love
taught that.
Oh yeah, totally. But I love that you mentioned virtual assistants also though, because that's something that a lot of SLPs have never even heard of, right? And so it's starting to kind of come into this to people's idea that like, if you have a private practice and, things need to get done, administrative tasks, schedule. I know that you're private pay, but calling insurance companies or sending invoices or all these kind of things, like someone has to do it, but you don't necessarily have to do it. And it's frankly not a good use of your time to like take time away from seeing clients, which is an income generating activity.
Right.
And instead you're doing all the, I mean, to me, boring spreadsheet stuff or, running the numbers or that kind of things. Right. So
Thank you.
that it's perfect for someone else who actually does love those things, right? I don't know anything about this person, but maybe he or she doesn't like being outside, right?
Right.
And they're like amazed that you love to be outside and that you're so creative and all these other stuff. They like to do the stuff, right? So it's great to have people like in their zones of genius. And then
Right.
just one other thing I'll say about that, like for people, and I'll just speak for myself, having a brain that accidentally drops the ball on things, doesn't have good attention to detail and whatnot, like I literally need people like that to help me run the business, right? So for anyone who has been following me over a period of time and noticed some growth over the years, a lot of that growth has come from hiring people who do have very strong attention to detail and excellent follow through and make sure that all of these ideas that I come up with actually happen in a way that that works. So anyway, if you have a type of brain where you need some extra support to get stuff done, then hiring a virtual assistant is an amazing hire for you.
Absolutely. I mean, I wish she was local. She could actually organize my real office
Mm.
or office. We're in the works of building space, so I have an actual office. So right now I'm sitting on the floor of my sister-in-law's house. So those are the long-term goals, is to have an office space. And like I dream into, you know, what could outdoorsy be. And it's a piece of land. It requires some form of water, like there needs to be a stream or a brook or a river. Um, and a yurt and a toilet, and then like my clients can come to me and we can be in this amazing outdoor space with this beautiful outdoor classroom and, the indoor space too, because like we do have some weather up here in New Hampshire, and the winters, they get cold. I made it through this winter, and I just, I made my schedule right, but it has to change with the seasons, so there's a lot of change that happens. Kids can make it 30 to 40 minutes outside when it's 20 degrees with the right gear, but like I can't go 8 kids back to back in 20-degree weather because I won't make it. So I've learned some lessons like that. I'm totally cool in the rain. Like it can rain on me all day and I'm like good. I'm sore at the end of the day, but like it's okay. The worst for me is the heat. So we're into the heat season of trying to figure out how to stay cool. So I will share those tips as I figure it out.
Well, I love that. I love that. So for anyone who's been listening to this, who is like, oh my gosh, this is such a great idea. Kate is such a cool person. This is the coolest thing that I've ever heard of. Where can people find you online?
So you can find me on Instagram at outdoorsyslp. And then my website is outdoorsyslp.com. And that's kind of my presence. You won't find me on TikTok. I don't know how to use it. I watch the TikToks on Instagram weeks later. I'm 40-ish. I'm almost 40. So I'm never going to figure it out. Power to you that can. And then, I'm also on Facebook, the Outdoorsy SLP. So it's all the same. Those are all the places you can find me. You can reach me. You can email me. It's just kate@outdoorsyslp.com. I love to collaborate. Um, I do go back and forth with lots of SLPs on Instagram, and I'm excited if people are interested in learning about the course and when it launches to share that information. It'll probably go out first on my Instagram, just because that's where we have the biggest pull of other SLPs wanting to learn about being outdoors. So
I love it. Well, again, thank you, Kate, so much for sharing your story and just sharing your energy and being like a really cool person, a really cool thinker. And like, this is the point of the podcast. The literal point of the podcast is to show people that there are so many ways to have a private practice. And this is one of them. And, I think it's one of the more creative ways than I've been able to share on the show. But, just thank you for being such a great example of someone who came up with a really cool idea and is doing it and is now going to also be helping other people learn how to do it too. So thank you so much, Kate.
awesome. I just appreciate your time and all your knowledge, Jenna. Like I wouldn't be in this position without you and your program. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Thank you everyone for listening/watching, and we'll see everyone next week for another episode of the podcast. All right. Bye everyone.
Bye.